in the first century, discipleship was the apex of the Jewish education system. So there were 3 levels to Jewish education. The first was called Beit Sepher, a Hebrew phrase meaning house of the book. It was essentially a grade school where you would learn to read, write, do basic math, and you would learn all of it from the book, meaning the Bible. In fact, on top of that, you would memorize most, if not all, of the Torah. That's the first 5 books of what we now call the Old Testament. Can you imagine that? So those of you that have been reading through the Bible this last year, Genesis through Deuteronomy memorized by like age 12. You're thinking, that's why my kids are so messed up. Yes. You have nothing. Now, the vast majority of children were done right after that, around age 12. If you were female, you would get married and start to bear children by age 13 or 14. So I know we have a long ways to go, sisters, and women's rights, but we've come a ways. So 13, that's young. And if you were male, then you would apprentice to your father in the family business. But the best of the best moved on to a second level of education called Beit Talmud, or the House of Learning. There was a school that was literally built off to the side of the synagogue for men and men only, ages 12 to 14 or 15, who would learn from a full-time paid teacher and who would memorize most, if not all, of what we now call the Old Testament. So can you imagine that? Like, it took us, 8 months to read the thing. Can you imagine and some of you are like, bro, I did not make it through February. That's okay. No guilt trip. We're in Luke right now. Feel free to join up late. But can you imagine now it's an oral culture. Just keep telling yourself so you don't feel so stupid. All of that memorized in the back of your head. So now, at that point, almost everybody was done. But the best of the best of the best, the summa cum laude, the Rhodes Scholarship, the elite, would go on to become a talmidim, or an apprentice to a rabbi. That was the third level of education. But this was over the top hard to even get into. You would sit for an interview with a rabbi, if you were lucky enough to get one, and he would just grill you. How well do you know the Torah? What about the Mishnah? Are you familiar with Rabbi Hillel's take on the Nephilim from Genesis 6? Or like whatever the thing was. He would interrogate you. And if he thought that you had the smarts, you were intelligent enough, you had the acumen, you had the work ethic and the drive and the knack and the talent to become a rabbi yourself one day, then he would turn to you and say something like, come and follow me, or come and be one of my talmidim. Now, let's say that were to happen, right? And the odds are not in your favor. But let's say you made the cut and you became an apprentice. Then you had 3 goals as an apprentice of a rabbi. Your first goal was to be with your rabbi. Think of that line we read, quote, that they might be with him. Apprenticeship was 24/7, so it was not like, class Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It was all day, every day. You would literally follow your rabbi around every single day. You would eat 3 meals a day at his side, sleep at his side all day long. There's a well-known Hebrew blessing in the first century that sounded something like, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. Keep in mind, this is the desert. It's the first century. There's a paved road is a rare thing, pretty much only in a city. And so at the end of a day, after following, and that was not a metaphor, by the way, that was literal, after following your rabbi from town to town, the hope was, if you were lucky, if you were blessed in Hebrew vernacular, then you were covered in the dust of your rabbi. So that was your first goal, to be with your rabbi. Secondly, to become like your rabbi. That line we read about how Jesus said to Peter and James and the guys, hey, follow me and I will make you into fishers of men. Now, most of the time we read that and we think it's like a cheesy pun or something like that, like, hey, you're fishing for fish and I'll make you fish for people, or something like that. That is not actually what Jesus, he has a better sense of humor than that. It's actually quite funny, but it's lost in translation. Fishers of men was a well-known Hebrew idiom that for a teacher, so a great teacher, if it was just a great kind of rock star rabbi, was called a fisher of men because he would capture your mind and your imagination. Jesus is saying, hey, you're a fisherman. Come follow me. I'll make you into a great teacher. I'm a rabbi. I'm a great teacher. I will make you into a great teacher as well. And that was really the heart and soul of apprenticeship. We live in an age, in particular in a city like Portland and a generation like ours, where it's all about be true to yourself and you're a snowflake and there's nobody else like you in the universe and you're the most special thing ever and blah, 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 right? And like we're just all into like be weird, and of course that weird is now normal. So if like you really want to be weird, just be normal, especially in this city. And that's fine. That's not even a bad thing. But in Jesus' day, it was not like that at all. Your goal was to become the carbon copy of your rabbi. I mean, you would literally follow him around and copy his every move, imitate his tone of voice, his mannerisms, his dress. You wanted to be him. So first, be with your rabbi. Second, become like your rabbi. And your third goal was to do what he did. Did you see that line about how Jesus' end goal was to, quote, send them out to preach and have authority to drive out demons? That's what Jesus had been doing, preaching and driving out demons. And at some point he said, all right, now you're ready. You're up to bat. Did I just use a sports analogy? Holy cow. Me. Wow. That was for the 20 of you that care. That was your goal. Like now you're up. It's your turn. The whole point of apprenticeship was for you one day to become a rabbi yourself. So the hope was that after a few years in the program or whatever, if you made the cut, that your rabbi would turn to you and say something like, all right, kid, I believe in you. I believe you have what it takes. Go and make disciples.